Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peak Fest 2020. My name is Jess Amy Shed, and I am the digital content producer for Peak Fest. And we are so excited to have you here today for the conversation series, part 2. Before we get started, we would like to acknowledge the land that we are on and the land that we occupy. So Impulse Theatre lives and creates on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. We have staff members currently in these territories, but also on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I am currently in the territory of the Comox and Homolko nations in a place called Campbell River, which is where I grew up. And so these places are currently known as Victoria, Vancouver, and Campbell River, British Columbia. If you are in a different territory, I know we have people from all over the world here today, but if any of our attendees are in a different territory and you know where that is, please feel free to enter it into the chat. And we want to recognize that the equipment and high-speed internet that's integral to this digital version of Peak Fest is not available in many rural, Indigenous, and equity-seeking communities. And these technologies also have a significant carbon footprint that contributes to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous communities worldwide. So the access and impact of this digital version of Peak Fest is imperfect. We would love to thank the artists whose work you saw in our pre-show. So that work is part of the Elevators program, which is a new partnership between Impulse Theatre and Embrace Arts Foundation that showcases artwork by local neurodiverse and disabled artists. And when I say local, I mean Victoria, because that's where Impulse Theatre is based. Huge thank you to our funders, the BC Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Victoria. And thank you so much to Intrepid for partnering with us to create this conversation series. A few housekeeping notes. Yes, important one. So you can feel free to enter questions into the chat as we go along. But the best way to do that is in the chat box. There's a little drop-down blue menu. Change that to say all panelists and attendees. So that way everyone can see what you type. And yeah, we are just so excited to have you here for the conversation series with Heather, Lindsay, and some very special guests. So welcome, and I will pass it over to you, Heather. Take it away.
Thank you, Jess. Hi, everyone out there on this blustery, rainy night, if that is where you are in the territories. I am on the Lekwungen territory as well, now known as Victoria, BC. I'm Heather Lindsay. I'm with Intrepid Theatre, and I thank Impulse Theatre for inviting me and this idea to this platform. So thank you for being here tonight and being a part of these conversations. Something that has been making me excited and inspiring me lately is finding the connections that we have still on an international scale. I have been lucky to be able to travel on an international level and meet a lot of artists around the world. And I thought that during the pandemic, it's important to remember how we can stay connected with artists around the world and hear how everyone is stepping through the pandemic and the world that we're in today, staying inspired and what is keeping people creative. And there's also a lot of things that can connect us internationally right now with artists around the world. So many artists around the world have their festivals or art on digital platforms right now. And that's sort of why I wanted to highlight a few amazing artists that I know. So Erica and Fuyuko, would you like to join me? I would love to introduce some folks to the room for this conversation today. I will give you a little intro with Erica and Fuyuko. we were in Valletta, Malta, over a year ago. We applied to something called the Festival Academy through Festivals Europe, and we were accepted and were able to come together and spend 10 intense days talking about our festivals that we were a part of, either as a festival manager, the head of a festival, in arts department, education department of the festival. So very different components in festivals. We all came together with the love of festivals and the importance of bringing community and artists together to celebrate art and culture. So there were about over 40 of us that came together from about 23 countries. And I was so inspired by this experience that I really wanted to highlight some of these amazing humans and people to you all. So Erica and Fuyuko, welcome. I will not speak for you because I would love for you to introduce yourself. Fuyuko, would you like to begin and introduce yourself to the folks, tell everyone where you're from and sort of the art that you are getting up to right now?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Fuyuko Mezawa. I'm from Tokyo, Japan, and I am a producer of contemporary dance in Japan, and I'm also producing my own dance company named Baobab, and also other artists company, and also I have joined to the theater play, and yeah, and also I my dance company organized the own dance festival biennale in 2 years. So, and this year we have it's in 2 weeks. So now I'm just preparing it, and yeah, it's very hard situation now, and it's also the same in Japan. But I think Japan is much better than other countries. We can work as usual, almost as usual now. So I'm very glad to share the situation in the world today. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Erica, hello, welcome.
Hello. So I'm Erica McCalman. I am a Baladang Noongar woman. So my family's lived for over 3,000 generations on just outside of the city that's currently known as Perth, on the western coast of Australia. But I was born and raised on Kulin Nation country in the city of Melbourne, which is in a state called Victoria. Melbourne has a lot in common with Vancouver, and I've always wanted to go over there because we both have trams, and we both have a harbour, and we're both on unceded territories, and we both have a relationship to the British monarchy. So hi, cousins. I have also lived on Gadigal land in the Eora Nation in the city currently known as Sydney. And then I have been living and working for the last 18 months on the lands of the Larrakia people in Garamalang, currently known as Darwin, which is right up in the Northern Territory of Australia in the tropics. So yeah, Indonesia is just over there. In relation to me, I originally came up to work as a producer for Darwin Festival, which happens every year, and is kind of a highlight of the city of Darwin's social calendar. Darwin, unlike Sydney and Melbourne, which are cities of 5 million people, is a city that fluctuates. It has 150,000 people during the dry season, which is basically 6 months of the most beautiful summer you've ever seen in your life. And then it shrinks down to about 80,000 people during the 6 months of the wet season, which we're just going into now, where we have monsoonal rains and it's really sweaty and humid, which is why I'm not talking to you from my garden, because you just see my makeup running off my face. Yeah, COVID has kind of disrupted that cycle quite a fair bit, but maybe in a bit of a positive way. But yeah, I'm now a freelance producer under a consultancy called Art Oracle, which is how I experiment with producing practice and try out those ideas about being a producer that have been swimming around in my head while I was working for institutions.
Thank you. Welcome. I have so on the pandemic, to start there. So Fuyuko, you were saying that it hasn't, you're almost back to working normally at this moment, but did you all stop working? And then is your festival though all online coming up in December, or will it be in the theater and online?
Yeah, my festival will held in theater and also online. In Japan, the situation in theater in spring almost stop, same as another country, and we started from summer. And at first, we could gather very small number of audience, and now we can gather full house. But the situation of COVID become worse this 1 month, so maybe we cannot gather audience in full house. So we need to reduce the seat, and so many audience cannot come to theater. So yeah, we cannot show the performance to many people. So we do both in theater and online.
And with knowing that sometimes we have to adjust our audience sizes, in a festival mode, that comes down to money as well, and ticket sales can come through the door, and accessibility, and that how do you prepare for having to change an audience capacity when you're heading into a festival? Have you had extra support through government funding or?
Yeah. In Japan, actually, we have many official government support now, but it was at the first timing in the March or COVID start, it was nothing support. So our theater performing arts field people try to contact the government to make new support system. And yeah, they did very hard, and the government answered it, and so they created the special support grant system for this year, and so we could apply it. And actually, that after that, many not only government but also like private company try to support cultural field. So actually, this year we could get many money more than usual year. So this year will be okay if we could apply and get grant. But next year, I don't know the support will still continue or not. So yeah, this year it will be okay.
What about you, Erica? Has that been similar with the landscape in Darwin or in the community of Melbourne and areas of folks that you work with, of being able to adapt and having funding currently, but with the unknown of what will happen next year? How has that been affecting the city?
It's been an interesting one because Australia is a landmass that's roughly the same size as the contiguous United States and has similar dynamics of West Coast versus East Coast. But we've only got 26 million people occupying that space, and 10 million of them live in Melbourne or Sydney. So the way that I work, I tend to still work quite closely with people in Sydney, people in Melbourne. I've got a few clients over in Perth, and then I'm up in what we call the top end, which is right in the middle of the country at the northernmost point. And the initial idea for how I was working was that everything's about a 4.5-hour flight away from Darwin in either direction. So it was very easy for me, previous to the pandemic, to kind of jump on a plane once a month and go stay with friends in any of those major cities and do producing work on the ground face to face. And that dried up very quickly. And each city has had a very, very different experience of coronavirus. So My home city of Melbourne, has just come out of essentially an 8-month lockdown. It had a 6-week lockdown, and we thought everything was going to be fine sort of from about April. And then it became obvious that the virus had been going through the city around about July, and they went hard. It was really difficult for them. Mental health issues abound. Also housing and safety became precarious. Of course, all of the theatres shut down from March and hadn't activated again. So the industry itself, a lot of artists had lost work and lost jobs. And their existence had become very precarious. In Sydney, they'd had a lockdown for about 6 weeks, but they were able to go back outside again and didn't have the virus going through the population in the same way. So the theatres were able to come back online much faster. And then in Perth, their state is still cut off from the rest of us. They closed the border and just went, no, you're not allowed in. No one's allowed in. So they've been able to operate as normal after around about a 6-week lockdown, but no one can travel over to Perth without quarantining for 2 weeks. So the landscape of Perth's art has suddenly become super duper local, which has kind of been a good thing for Perth, because the East Coast tends to dominate in Australian arts, and Perth's they call it the Cinderella city because it's the most isolated city in the world. It's over on the West Coast, and it's actually closer to Singapore than it is to any other Australian city. And in Darwin, we have had no community transmission of COVID because we shut down our borders very, very quickly. And we've also got a major quarantine facility just outside of town because we're a military town and we're a strategic base for Australia to the north. So, yeah, it's been very, very different. Each state has its own government agency to do with creating arts funding. City of Melbourne / State of Victoria, very proactive, have had some excellent programs for getting money into artists' pockets quickly. Even kind of a little bit of a subtext of, we just want some sort of creative outcome, but if it goes on your rent, it goes on your rent. Just don't mention it in your acquittal. City of Darwin in the Northern Territory, we've got a very, very small government because we've got a very, very small population and a large landmass, so there hasn't been much money around, but the Darwin Festival was able to go ahead completely live with minimal restrictions, and it was hyper local for the first time. Darwin Festival usually brings in international and interstate acts, and sometimes the local artists can be neglected. So it really changed the mood quite a fair bit for this year. It was a really, really down home, lovely community festival where I remembered why I got into festivals in the first place. It was, you know, when you were a kid and you'd kind of go to the local fair or the local festival and you'd see the stage and you'd go, oh my God, my friend's dad's an amazing guitarist. Yeah, I didn't realize we detached so much from that in Australia because we've gone so super big. And federally, the Australia Council has kind of created a fund called the Resilience Fund, and got lots of $10,000 out to artists through competitive grant processes as quickly as possible, but it has exhausted their pot of money. So you've gotten a lot of money out to a lot of artists very, very quickly, but now it also means that no one can apply for a grant until March next year. And so they can't start any new projects until June next year for federal funding. So it's a bit of a swing and a roundabout. And one of the other things we've discovered through this process is that the amount of first-time grant applicants to arts rounds in Australia, I think the Australia Council said for their Resilience Fund, 80% of the artists who went for grants through Resilience had never had an interaction with the Australia Council before. So we're in a situation where there's less than 10% success rate in a usual grant round, and then that was suddenly exponentially grown as well too. So yeah, it depends kind of where you are, where you live, what the art scenes are, and what access you've got.
Yeah, it's really interesting though. I think I relate on the absolutely focusing on a local component. And I mean, we're looking at next year of all of 2021, and it's just there's such opportunity and excitement to just really invest into the local community, use this as an opportunity, and be able to create platforms and give opportunity for those artists who are neglected with funding and are neglected, especially in Victoria. We're on an island, so we sometimes get overshadowed by Vancouver, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, but there's such incredible artists here that now is the time to dive into the opportunity. Fuyuko, do you invite artists outside of Tokyo into your dance festival Scrum, or is it an international festival usually, or is it just local?
No, it's only inside Japan. And last time we invited the artists from other city, but this year actually we didn't know how the situation in December. In summer we couldn't move to another cities. It was the government try not to people move a lot in country. Yeah. So when the time we choose the artist, we didn't know the situation in December. So we try to choose the around the Tokyo. So this year is very local. Yeah.
And do artists apply, or do you go out and look for the artists, or do they apply to be in the festival? Oh, both. Yeah.
Both. Yes. Yes. Half we choose, half the artists apply to have open call.
And how many artists are in the festival?
This year we have 16.
Oh, wow. Amazing. All local and all dance companies.
Yes, all dance.
Dance-based.
Yeah. All dance, but some artists is from the play, the theater play, and they want to create a dance piece. So it's the first time to create dance piece, and we very welcome to like that kind of piece. So not only choreographer, but also like play writer or the actor.
Yeah, very multidisciplinary, all disciplines coming together. And I think with yourself, that's interesting because as Eric and I are kind of talking about, we are in festivals that bring international artists to our towns, and we work a lot with people all over our countries and outside of our countries. If artists in Tokyo and we can't travel right now outside of our countries, have you been finding, are there more artists in Tokyo looking for work as well right now on a local basis? Are you getting different people applying to your festival?
You mean the artists from other cities?
Artists who are in Japan or Tokyo basically, but who normally would travel to, let's say, Melbourne Fringe Festival, or are they now no one can travel? There's more. Is there just more artists trying to create work in Tokyo instead of traveling?
Yes. This year, many artists cannot go abroad and also cannot move a lot even inside Japan. So many artists stay in one city, but actually Tokyo is not. I think it's not the best place to create have creation, because the price of rehearsal studio is very expensive. So some artists try to move to another city, and they look for the residence system or support system of local areas government. So yeah, the situation become changed a bit.
It is amazing to hear the similarities. I think, Eric, are you discussing that as well, of that artists are leaving larger towns because artists now cannot afford to live, rehearse, create, find studios, theaters are closed, but that's happening as well, that it feels like people are just having to leave the cities. What about you, Erica?
Yeah, it's actually, Darwin is a capital city in Australia. It's the capital of the, it's not a state, it's the Northern Territory. It's about twice the size of Texas, with less than 1% of Texas's population. So it's enormous. It's a town that can get affected by lots of people moving to town very, very quickly. We've actually found that 4,000 people have moved from the south. We call it down south, where it's cold. They've moved up to Darwin because they want to avoid being locked down. And that's radically changed the rental market. Within about 2 weeks, everything skyrocketed. And we've got a lot of people who are on lower incomes who are now working with legal aid because there's been a bit of dodgy evictions happening because the people from wealthier southern states have started offering rent in cash and 20% more than the asking price because they just want a house and they want it quick. They've just left their state. But the other thing that kind of gives me optimism, though, is that as one of our former prime ministers said back in the 90s, if you're not living in Sydney or Melbourne, you're just camping out, meaning that, you know, you're not ambitious or you're not serious about what you're doing career-wise if you don't live in those cities. And I think that's always been kind of the unfortunate perception that we have in Australia, even though we don't kind of overtly talk about it. I can certainly say that from the perspective of somebody who's grown up in those two cities. But a lot of artists have started fleeing to regional areas, and it was kind of happening for about 5 years before COVID. Sydney and Melbourne's median house price had gotten ridiculous. So we knew that a lot of artists based in New South Wales had already gone to live in regional cities and still done work in Sydney. So they get on the train and come in and do stuff for Sydney Festival and then get back out again. But I think it's really exciting because regional art and regional cities has always kind of been seen as the not serious or the red-headed stepchild to kind of real artists. Perth has benefited already. Like, all of their talented people go east to Sydney or Melbourne if they want a career. They can't do that now, but it also means that you get a critical mass that starts nurturing their careers. So I'm kind of hoping that that trend sticks around and we finally reevaluate sort of this enormous country that we've got with amazing kind of regional centres and start really investing in those as people as well. And hopefully that leads to more vibrant art scenes within places other than the big two.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know, Australia for myself is so high regarded on the Fringe Festival world, where, you know, there's such huge Fringe festivals there, but of course they're in huge centers. So normally festivals are in the largest cities and they bring people together. Now that the festivals have to really adapt drastically, festivals aren't necessarily bringing tens and hundreds of thousands of people together right now. Do you think that there is longevity in the future of huge festivals like that? You know, I think the Fringe festivals in Australia are some of the largest in the world, beyond, you know.
Yeah. Perth is 700 shows for a city that's got 1.5 million people in it. I took a show to Perth Fringe earlier this year, and kind of the typical Fringe discussion or the typical Fringe adventure. And I'll put an article in the chat in a minute called Fringe's Uber. It was written by somebody from the Australian Fringe circuit who sort of talked about how amazing Fringe festivals are in an Australian context and how absolutely vital they are to kind of establishing artists and giving artists ability to practice. But it always seemed to be available for people who have the ability to lose $20,000 on doing a show for 3 people 20 times over. Like the proportion of people who actually make box office out of Fringe and recoup their costs, it is very, very slim. But Melbourne Fringe has been innovating quite a fair bit. I'm in a Melbourne Fringe show tomorrow.
Yes, you are.
From the NT. They came up with a festival called VCR Festival, which was kind of their sneaky little tester while they were in lockdown and ISO. So they had a teeny little festival called VCR Festival, which was all digital art, about 3 or 4 months ago. And then that was kind of their way of going, yes, we can put Melbourne Fringe on a couple of months later. Let's do it as a mix of live and digital. And most people actually have opted for digital. I had a client who booked me just for a one-on-one to check their concept, and we worked through it. And they were adamant about being live because they were cabaret. And the more that we talked about it, the more we realized, oh, if you go to a digital platform, you can actually, because they're from they're Polynesian Australian, and most of their families like over the Great Ocean that where all sits between us, the Pacific. They could actually do the show live and have all their aunties in Samoa watch the show along with the Melbourne audience and the audience around Australia. So I think there's actually a really interesting sort of future in that digital presentation when it comes to accessibility, but also how it changes geography and sense of place. I'm still considered very much part of the Melbourne arts community. I've been doing the lockdown by proxy with a lot of them. I've been the friend that people have been calling when they're going, I'm cracking up, I need you to talk to me about something, just anything if it's not to do with this. And now I can sit out on my patio and spend 6 hours doing tarot readings for people who are going to call 1-300 Fringe tomorrow, because that's their concept. They decided to band together some artists and create a Fringe hotline. So
I'm going to ask you to just talk a little bit more about Art Oracle. And so Fringe Hotline then relates to Art Oracle. Is that tied into?
Yeah, I think Simon, the artistic director of Melbourne Fringe, he decided that he wanted 16 artists and we each get a day on the phones and people are invited to call 1-300, which is a free line in Australia. So 1-300 Fringe between the hours of, I think, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. and you get an artist or a creative worker on the other end who will help you solve your problems. And yeah, Simon said, well, Erica's an oracle, so let's get Erica involved in it. And the reasoning behind that was that my consultancy Art Oracle is a bit of a hybrid creative collaborator / producer, and it's deliberately aimed at independent artists, and it's deliberately affordable to independent artists, because most of the artists that I know who want and need a producer, they don't need to pay one full time to get their stuff sorted, and they can't afford it either. They just the industry, and it's probably the same in Canada, it is quite opaque if you're an outsider. Like, it took me a good 15 years of kind of hanging around bars and trying to wheedle my way into hanging around with the right people and paying attention and asking questions and listening a lot and making sure that I was at all of the conferences and to amass a knowledge of how to actually navigate the Australian arts industry. That information is not freely available if you're not part of the right circles. So that was kind of where Art Oracle came out of. I really wish that I had somebody I could have called when I was 22 just to have an hour to go, how the hell do I write a grant application? Or I just had an interview with an AD that made me feel really bad and I don't know why, and I need to talk about it with somebody. Or I have this creative idea and I have no idea how to get it off the ground. Can you help me? So yeah, that was the idea for Art Oracle, which has now kind of grown a tarot arm as well too in response to the pandemic, and is growing an astrology arm as well too.
Which is amazing. We'll talk about that in a little more. But I agree that as a early career artist or an artist who is just starting out, to try to connect with the community or the professional community is so intimidating, and you do feel like such an outsider. Fuyuko, how is it for emerging and early career artists in Tokyo? I mean, in my perspective, because Tokyo is such a huge city, is there a connection between artists all over Tokyo, or is it, you know, the regions within? How do people connect in such as a young artist starting out?
Yeah, actually, it's very difficult to connect because in Tokyo, actually, there is not many art festival. So, and also we organize by company, but like that festival is not in there. So just like competition or like the performing arts festival sometimes invite dance, but mainly is the theater play. So contemporary dance is more minor field. So there is not many chances to have communicate each other between dancers. So we create this festival to be the part of like that connection chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this festival, the last time we tried to get audience more younger ages and try to make the connection between the same generation first, and maybe we can make career together, and to create more, how to say, about powerful the atmosphere to contemporary dance field. But from this year, we couldn't, how to say it, we couldn't do in this half year to create together or to have conversation. We couldn't go hang out. So in this festival, maybe we share the performance and how the artist think about this situation and how create their piece. And maybe we try to have a conversation with like this Zoom session, or I don't know, but and try to make the time to have conversation, because I think I'm not sure it's only in Japan, but many dancers, choreographers is cannot talk a lot about their creation or about their identity of artist art. So have conversation or talk to others to about their creation is very important. So I want to create that kind of chance this year, like that.
Yeah, I think that it's always so important to start to try to express your art form or what you're trying to create or who is it for. That's such a hard thing to do when you're starting to create your own work, to actually put it into words. And yes, especially dancers who are so, they speak in a different way. But is there a fringe in Tokyo? Is there a fringe festival in Tokyo? I can't remember.
I don't think so. It's
No.
not so many. It's
I
very festival organized by the Tokyo city government or the Yokohama city government, like that, but not so many fringe festival.
Yeah. So are you one of the only independent dance festivals in Tokyo?
I think so. I think so.
Wow. And this is your fourth Scrum?
Third time.
Sorry, third Scrum. Wow. That's congratulations. That's amazing. Yeah, I would say congratulations to that. That's surprising to me because I guess that's me assuming. I assume in a huge city that it's going to be tons of independent artists doing festivals or their own creations, but is it because it's so expensive, or?
Yeah, it's expensive. The theater price is expensive, so it's very difficult to make budget only from ticket selling.
Yeah.
So maybe if we do, we need to apply grant and get money. But Japanese grant system is a bit strange. It's not, how to say, they don't give us money just like this price, but we give the expenses list to when we apply, and they give money only the how to say we cannot manage.
Yes.
You understand what I mean?
So your expenses, you can't cover this amount, so then they'll give you that amount of that. So you have to show that you have other funding. You have ticket sales, fundraising, sponsorship, and then the remaining they'll give you the funds for.
Yeah. So I mean, if we apply the grant very straight way, then we cannot get our guarantee.
Right.
We only get the expense we lost. So it's if so we try to make expense a bit tricky and to make extra money. to get for our own budget, our own guarantee.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's very, very strange system, and how to say, we need the technique to apply. So not many people cannot do that, especially artists. So it's very difficult to do the big event, not only festival, but also performance or something.
And especially when you're just beginning your career, that you are working other jobs, and these grants are a huge component. They take up a lot of time, a lot of thought. I guess maybe the pandemic gives us a bit more time to research and look for other options of funding right now, and have a bit more time maybe. But I do think, like, as well, if you've lost work, I mean, I want to dive into talking about actually what Art Oracle is for you, Erica, because I do think that I think it's one of the great ways that artists are creating online. Where did the tarot readings actually, can you please tell people what I'm talking about, first of all? I think you're way better to say it than me. I participated in Erica's project last night, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So it was kind of, so Art Oracle, yeah, absolutely exists. And I think kind of the summation of Art Oracle really is that how do I become the person that I really needed when I was 22? So I come from a socioeconomically, it's actually kind of funny. I come from a very middle class family, but I had to leave home at 16. So I lived, so entering the arts, came through nightclubs. So I really did not come from sort of an educated background, and Melbourne's the kind of city where the first question is, where did you go to school? Because they're trying to figure out where you sit in the social strata, and you know who's got shared friends and who's got shared resources. So that's kind of your first obstacle to getting into the arts. In terms of the pandemic, I just spent 18 months building up my independent practice full time, pretty much. I had big clients like the Australian Performing Arts Market, because they were going to put on the event this August in Darwin, and fingers crossed we'll have another international event happening at the same time in 2021. I also had kind of a gaggle of independent projects, helping artists navigate the process that Fuyuko just talked about. Like Australian grants you do get the money, but the amount of accounting witchcraft that you need to know in order to gain one is just insane, and absolutely not what independent artists could do. But yes, oh, excuse me, Teal Santa is here with my new iPhone. I'll explain that.
We did have the warning that Erica's getting a new iPhone right now. Great. Well, it's just you and me right now. Yay. I'm so glad we got to witness that.
Just for everybody watching at home, so in Darwin, Toll Holdings are teal coloured in their uniform. And so I call them Teal Santa Claus, because they bring all of the things that we want delivered, but you have to be there to meet them. Otherwise, you have to go to the depot and you're not going to get your thing for 5 days.
Are we now going to watch you unbox this? Is this now turning into like a reveal?
I won't do that one. So, I'm just so grateful to have a phone that works in time for being on the phone all day tomorrow for Melbourne Fringe, because my current phone is like half functional. So phew, that's a relief. So yes, back to Tarot Oracle. When I lost about $40,000 of work within a week, and my annual income is $50,000. So we were really fucked. Like, my partner is an actor and a director and a writer. I'm not one of the independent producers in Australia who has a partner with a grown-up job and a decent income. The both of us are hustling. And as I started working with artists, trying to navigate what on earth this pandemic was doing to our industry and our careers and our hopes and our dreams, I was spending a lot of time just on the phone with people just devastated and confused and wanting to know what on earth to do and feeling incredibly lost. And it occurred to me that I suddenly had a lot of free time on my hands, and I have been really quite seriously interested in astrology and tarot reading for a good 20 years. But I used to do it in bars in exchange for drinks when I was a poor student. And I think I actually did it in a gate lounge on the way to Malta last year in Dubai, because I used to take the cards on the plane with me and just entertain people when I had a couple of hours break in those big airports. And I was starting to use the cards, and I was starting to use astrology a lot to explain what was happening, because actually this pandemic is directly linked to movements of the planets that astrologers have known about for about 20 years. The thought was that absolutely world markets were going to start crashing. We're entering into a new era where it's more about the collective and less about domination and economic exploitation. And you kind of need to have a few years of just wiping all of the shit away first before you can build something nice. So I realized no one's making any work. Everybody's applying for like 8 million grants that they know that they don't have much of a chance of getting. People were just kind of looking for a way to help figure out what they were going to do next, and how they were going to survive this time. And I needed to figure out an income stream that honestly wasn't dependent on artists getting grants and creating work, because if they were in trouble, I was in trouble. So yeah, I decided to knuckle down and finally start qualifying formally as a professional tarot reader, and start qualifying formally as a professional astrologer, and I've been building a little practice over the last 2 months where people are coming to me instead of having an appointment to figure out how to navigate the arts industry. They're having an hour with me and the tarot cards, and we use them as a provocation to kind of figure out your life and what you really want to get out of the next 12 months, and where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, how you're going to truck along. And kind of, yeah, absolutely, I'm not psychic, I'm highly intuitive, and I've got an amazeballs occult knowledge, because I'm both First Nations and I also come from a European lineage that's got European occult knowledge in it. So but yeah, I think that one of my clients who was non-arts last week said to me, half of the healing is just the talking. Not everybody can get a psychologist, not everybody can get a psychiatrist, not everybody can get a counselor. And sometimes those people, that's kind of like trying to swat a fly with a hammer. I just feel like shit and I need to talk to somebody and talk about my life and look at it from a different perspective. So that's yeah, the tarot arm of art oracle.
And you have your artistic skill set. So like the way you have your camera set up, it's very much like an independent like theater show as well. I mean, I think that what artists are relating to is, artists relate to what is happening to a community, what is happening to each other for survival. Artists are the first people, or some of the first people, to really be able to adapt and follow what is happening within their environment and things around them, and to push through. And I think that it's a really creative, beautiful, it's not a show, it's like exactly, it's a connection. But I think as an artist, you've found this moment of recognizing that people just really need a connection for this fucked up moment that we're in right now as well. And I really wanted to highlight that, because for myself, it was something that I feel like everyone needs and will inspire a lot of artists to. I mean, there's so much art that is inspiring right now, what people are doing at home and how people are moving to an online platform. But then as you get, like, how do you make it your own and really deeply find out, how do you express yourself in an adapted medium, an online medium, if you've never gone to that platform before. And I think, Fuyuko, you're saying so Scrum now is also going to be online. Will it be live streamed, or are artists coming already with the tools of creating shows in their bedrooms or in a park, or how is the online content? Is it still going to be in a theater?
Yes, this year we record the piece in the perform in theater, and we edit in 1 week and
Okay.
try to broadcast next week. But the depends on the copyright of music right. So we some pieces are cannot be streamed. So some artists wants to create the other piece for digital. So some artists create, I don't know where they create, but maybe in their room, I don't know. But I think it's very interesting and may become, how to say, the more diverse to create art piece. So yeah, we very welcome to what they want. They create their own style and the streaming. And yeah, maybe the audience can watch the piece not only theater but also in some other places, and audience recognize the art piece is not only theater but also the many other kinds. So
Yeah, exactly. And I keep forgetting actually that you were saying that everyone is almost back at work now, that the theaters are open again, which for some reason, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around that right now. And that's amazing. Well, I wanted to talk more about actually what I didn't know about you two, about keeping international connections. You were talking about the APP, and we were talking about the Festival Academy. And again, in a way that I think, what was inspiring for you about these platforms where artists from around the world are coming together, like the Festival Academy or APP?
For me, actually, the Japanese cannot speak English very how to say the not there's it's not mother tongue for us. So many artists and also producers feel a bit afraid or feel some war to connect internationally, like. Actually, for me, same. But I attended the APP, is the Asian Producers Platform. It holds the camp every year since last year, and Erica is in there. And last year we went to Hong Kong and Macau and Kaohsiung, and also the 2 years ago we went to Indonesia and make 1 week camp. So if I'm in there, I can talk face to face and how say keep to feel the atmosphere, and it's easy to get information. But in online is a bit both the to listening is a bit harder than the face-to-face time, but the talking is easier for me because I'll say the people wait to wait for me to finish talking. Like the real conversation is like more, how to say, the complicated like that. So this digital connection to international people is have both good way and good and bad for me. But maybe the many Japanese not try to attend like kind of this session for now. So not, I think that many Japanese don't try to have international connection in this COVID situation for now. So I think it's very dangerous situation in Japan, because Japan is an island country and need to go abroad by only by train or ship, and also the other the entering is same. So if I lost the mind to connect from actively, then we lost the chance to connect internationally. So I try to attend this kind of session if my English is not good, or if I don't understand, but I want to try and to share this the our situation, and also want to know the other country's situation.
Erica, what do you get about these connections that we have in person and now online on international artist levels?
I'm finding it really kind of inspiring and interesting as well too. It's I think it is a characteristic of being Australian that we also don't talk very much about, but a local artist named Mish Grigor created a show called Exit Strategies last year that she asked me to kind of help her out with some of the dramaturgy. Her exact words were, "Can you make sure that I don't sound like a privileged, ignorant white person, and I'll pay you for it?" And I went, great. Talking about that idea that Australians are really obsessed with the idea of traveling. It's like a rite of passage to get your passport and go overseas, particularly in the arts. You kind of don't get your street credibility or your credibility as a creative until you spend time in Europe and find your contemporaries over there, or to a lesser extent, North America. But it's kind of a population full of people who really kind of crave that interaction. Sometimes for ego reasons, as opposed to embracing other cultures and understanding other cultures as well too. There's kind of been two things that's really struck me since the pandemic hit in terms of international relations, which was how quickly my international colleagues from particularly the Festival Association, but also some APP colleagues and some friends outside of those contexts in other continents started reaching out and kind of became part of my regular daily routine. So they weren't kind of exotic people that I saw on Facebook and commented on their stuff every so often and sometimes saw. They've now become part of my everyday crew of people on a personal level and a professional level, which I find really sort of intriguing as we're so restricted in real life right now. But also how I've really enjoyed being able to just stay in one place and actually find some peace and equilibrium within Darwin rather than having to jump on a plane every month. That was exhausting me, and I didn't realize how much it was that the actual physical travel was. So yeah, I'm really optimistic, and I actually think it's really, really, really super important that we all kind of explore how we can keep talking to each other and make each other a part of our daily lives and our daily community via technology and the internet, so that we don't lose that body of knowledge and lose those relationships that we've been building over the last 50 years as we've become more mobile as well too. Like I would like to see progression in international understanding rather than regression. And some of those examples, like my client who's in a Melbourne Fringe show, but half of Samoa's watching as well too, and a large crowd in New Zealand are tuning in. Like there's those little opportunities that I'm seeing open up, which give me great hope.
Yeah, I think there's something amazing about the Festival Academy. Unfortunately, I can never join the discussions because it's like 3 a.m. my time, and I'm like, I can't. But these conversations that are happening from artists, young artists from around the world, talking about similarities of self-care. Will we ever work again? You know, these similar, and it just brings us together that we have similar things that everyone's going through, but then also, of course, so differently, because any town or village or city that you're in reflects you as an artist, who you are at that time, but also your cultural background in the country that you're in. You bring such a different perspective. So I find these conversations so inspiring. And of course, on your own local level, it's so amazing to connect with your community here on a local level. But there's just something really about hearing that we all have these similar challenges right now, but we're approaching them so differently, and it's very inspiring. So I do really, we'll throw up all of links to the Festival Academy and things like that for everyone out there. But it's been quite life-changing to hear a global perspective on social, political, communities and artists from around the world, on how everyone is adapting, being scared, mental health, care, the lack of festivals, the lack of work, or the opportunity to just dive in and create new work. It's been quite inspiring to stay connected with the Festival Academy as much as I can. That's for sure. And I think lots of people don't know about it either. For when travel is available again. I mean, the Festival Academy, I guess they're fully online. Erica, you now have become a mentor for the Festival Academy to certain things, and they are doing the festival managers, I think, online now. Is that right? And it's through an application basis. And I really recommend everyone out there.
Yeah, I believe they're going to try to do Belgium and Kampala again next year. So they've opened up EOIs, which I think is probably a wise choice, because also I've noticed such a shift in just who's doing what in the industry. I don't know if it's the case in Japan and Canada, but in Australia in the last 2 months, I've noticed so many executive director and artistic director and head of programming jobs come up. So we're having a real kind of turnover down here of who's in charge of what. But absolutely, the Festival Academy, it's so great to have an opportunity to A, go overseas, B, find your counterparts from elsewhere, because it's kind of a rare thing to be a festival director, particularly if you're a festival director in a city. There's usually not another version of you around. If you're in Darwin, there's only one festival director, and we all know him. And it's such a small place that everybody feels entitled to go up to him at the pub and tell him exactly what they think of his programming and his choices. That's some enormous pressure. And it's a really unique, strange situation. It's a very specialized sort of professional stream, and just the ability to see what you're doing from a different perspective is just really valuable, because you can, especially if you're doing something annually, you kind of get stuck into the template of how you do it. You eventually figure out how you're going to program. What's the theme? Who's on the staffing structure? We need a keynote. And you can kind of keep reinventing the wheel, and you don't notice when it gets stale sometimes, or you don't have the ability to think outside the square.
And also,
meanwhile, my partner might just come into view.
And the Festival Academy as well. I mean, at our academy, there are people who are in like many different components in the festival world. Like some were heading the education department, some were the heads of a festival. So everyone, or a volunteer coordinator, or from they production managed or produced this aspect of a festival. But then there was also, beyond the Festival Academy, there was opportunities for production managers, and there's a whole network of the Festival Academy. So again, I know this isn't a promotion for it, but it's quite inspiring. And I think at this moment, to connect with international artists is quite an interesting opportunity. It's so intimate right now as well, that people, again, are just, I feel everyone's just very open to the unknown right now. So it brings us together in a very different way of navigating this journey as an artist right now through these days. So I guess with that, what is keeping you currently really inspired right now, moving through these days and getting into and thinking about next year? What is keeping you inspired?
Sorry, my connection was breaking a bit.
I'm just asking the easy question of what is keeping you inspired, the big inspiration of the day. What are things that inspire you through the day to navigate your way through art and moving your festival online and writing grants and all the above?
Your question is like these days in the COVID situation and like that. Actually, I'm not sure the very near future for now. So maybe we try to figure out the best way in that time, and we choose how we organize or how we connect together. I don't know, but yeah, Yeah, we just choose.
Yeah, one day at a time.
I think so. Yeah, and maybe. But actually, I think it's very good chance to do new thing or to meet new people or to do work together with new people. And because now it's everyone don't know the future and everyone has uncertain feeling to future. It's the means on the other hand it's the very good challenge time. So yeah, maybe try to find try keep try and and find good things to do.
Thank you. I agree. Keep trying. Yeah, just keep trying and it will lead you somewhere new and might surprise you. Yeah, Erica, what's giving you inspiration these days?
I think particularly in Australia within the arts, we really were we were getting to a kind of feverish point. A lot of the money had been taken out of the arts, and that was slowly eroding small to medium arts organizations and independent artists' ability to do anything. And there was a lot of burnout. There was a lot of anger from artists, very justifiably, because they couldn't understand why they weren't being given opportunities, or even when they were trying as hard as they possibly could. The gate wouldn't open. We were also seeing a lot of turnover of staff at small to medium arts organizations because everybody had kind of hit a point where they were being paid, less than the average wage for a 40-hour week, and they were really working a 60-hour week because they were doing two people's jobs. Like, it had hit that point. So this was kind of a really good circuit breaker to kind of force everybody to just stop and stop trying to tread water, stop denying that things are wrong, stop really scrabbling very hard to maintain your position in the industry while everybody else is having a problem. So I think that's kind of the thing that's been inspiring me lately, is that ability to go, right, let's just stop pretending that we're this person and just talk to each other like people. You don't have enough money to feed yourself or pay the rent this week. How are we going to get you out of this situation? You're having a breakdown or you're burned out because you've been overworking for 5 years. This is okay. How do we heal you? The amount of conversations that have started popping out from people who've been suffering quietly because they've been bullied by people within the industry. There's nothing to preserve anymore, so they can finally talk about their experiences and find something resembling support or justice. Those are the things that are kind of inspiring me, because I do really feel that as painful as this time and this situation is, it's actually what's needed to get to the next stage of the future. So kind of keeping me afloat at the moment is realizing when you're flogging a dead horse and feeling okay with stepping away from it. And that comes down to working with artists as well too, and being able to talk them through. You can let go of this project and this concept. You're not going to get the result that you need out of it. There's no resources. All right, just let go. Who are you when you don't have that thing or that's keeping you afloat? You can do anything that you want. So yeah, there's freedom in decay and chaos if you know how to seize that opportunity and ride it. And that also means, some really frank conversations with yourself as well too, around your expectations and your needs and your desires.
Well put. Well, I think my inspiration right now is coming from the both of you. Thank you so much for being here and being present and sharing your heart and your voice. And again, yes, Fuyuko, to acknowledge, of course, we're speaking English. Erica and I, this is our English is our first language. We also acknowledged it in Malta when there was over 40 of us. And I think 5 of us, English was our first language. So the bravery, and I know, Fuyuko, you were saying that being in Japan as well right now at the the lockdown, you're not speaking as much English because you're not traveling, you're not, so yeah, so thank you for being brave and speaking with us in our language. I do want to acknowledge that, Erica and I have it a lot easier to travel the world and speak English. So thank you, Fuyuko, for being here today and speaking English with us. And you can speak English with us anytime you're getting lonely or like you need to brush up on, you're like, I haven't spoken English in so long. Give me a Zoom.
Okay.
But thank you so much, both of you. I'm going to slowly wrap this up now. I think we have maybe gone over time because I could just listen to both of you all day. But I do, Fuyuko, please have a great festival. We will let everyone know about Scrum, and but you put the links in the chat already, but we'll remind everyone about it. I can't wait to check out the online content, and Erica as well with, again, if people out there interested in a tarot creative reading. It was an amazing experience, and of course, it's you have an international platform as well for it. So we'll put that information up for everyone out there to see if they want to experience that as well. Thank you for joining me in Victoria on the Kwanghan territory. It's so nice to be able to connect with you both again. Thank you to the Peak Festival, to Andrew and Jess for allowing me to experiment and try to, bring us together on an international connection. I just feel like we have such similar journeys right now, but we're experiencing similar things in such vastly different environments. And I do always think that bringing people together can keep inspiring everyone. And yeah, again, let's not flog the dead horse. Let's not keep going around in our normality anymore. So thank you both very much.
Thank you very much, Heather, to inviting me. And
I miss you. Well, I hope that we can actually see each other in person again. I definitely want to stay connected that way, but yeah. But hopefully, maybe I just have to start, I just have to change things. I have to start waking up at 3 a.m. or so I can hang out with you all in the Festival Academy online Zooms right now, or the panels. But I'm not sure how to close down the Zoom right now. So I will just, thanks, Cass. I was like, I'm not sure how to close it down.
Yes, that's where I come in. Yeah, just again, a huge thank you from Peak Fest and Impulse Theater. It was so lovely to meet you both and have you both here. And thanks again, Heather, for coordinating this and making this happen, and everybody for coming and watching and listening. There's only 2 more events left in Peak Fest. We have Peak Show 9 on Friday night and the Showcase on Saturday night, and both of those shows feature very exciting new work, digital content in process. So hopefully you can join us. Yeah, thanks. Take care. Both. Am I back?
I think you might have just frozen, which is kind of the best way to end a Zoom. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Fuyuko, and thank you, Erica. I will probably email you right after this to say thank you.
Oh, good.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by.